Hello, everyone. G'day to everyone that's watching live tonight on this Wednesday night as we're getting closer to the end of November. And thanks to everyone that's watching on the replay. I appreciate that. Drop a comment, let me know that you are. It's the first live I've done in about 6 weeks. So we're up to episode 43. So, yeah, pretty crazy. I've done 43 live. They were a weekly thing. They then went to fortnightly, and now they're a bit sporadic all over the place. But for those that aren't aware, I did have some time off. We had our first child just over a month ago, 5 weeks ago today. So I had some time off from YouTube, but I've come back, did a video the other day, and then did another one yesterday that come out talking about the FTX situation and what was going on with that. So, sorry, I just wanted to make a video today just to talk about, what's been happening over the last, 6 weeks kind of thing. There's a few different topics I can cover. So talk about what's been happening for myself personally, talk about, tax deadlines, budget, interest rates, and the crypto market. So I want to cover a few of those. If anyone's got any questions, drop them in the comments as we go. So yeah, so I had some time off and yeah, it was good. Got to spend some time with my family. And yeah, now I'm getting back into the swing of working, which is fun, and getting back into the YouTube game. So wanting to really try and put out the consistent consistent videos over 20, especially in 2023. So I talked about it briefly on a video, I think. With the I had a goal initially for 2022 to hit 10,000 subscribers. I've only just hit 3,000. So I think I started the year about 1,500 off the top of my head. And I thought that things would go a bit quicker, but then I realized I haven't really done anything to warrant that growth. I haven't put out the consistent content to the level that I would have liked. I haven't, done anything different, made any different types of content. Haven't probably put some thought into some of the content, maybe just done a video for making a video's sake. So I really want to have a better focus for 2023. I'm doing some, education around these things with YouTube. We've got a good channel base here, but I do want to grow. I want to get the word out to more people and help more people with a range of different things. So, you guys letting me know the types of, content you want me to cover is really, really helpful. So, got a couple of people swinging by. The octopus is here. Yes, all is going well. I hope all is going well in the ocean with all you and your ocean buddies. And yeah, so that's something, something I think will be a key focus for next year is the YouTube stuff. Tax, yep, I will get into that now. Of tax deadlines. So while I was off, when I was doing a bit of work at the time anyway, because the 31st of October deadline come past. So for those lodging their own returns, that's been and gone. I see the spike, around those last couple of days on YouTube. So there's plenty of people I think leave it till the 31st of October and then frantically, you know, trying to get their return done right on the 31st. So that's always a bit of the laugh. And yeah, so if you haven't done, if you were going to lodge yourself, you're likely going to be late. If you're going through an agent, the good thing is that most people that go through an agent get an extension till the middle of May. So I've still got well over 100 returns that still need to be done, and they'll be done trickled across the next few months. Ideally, I'd love to get most of that done before Christmas, but not everyone wants to get their return done then or has their information organised in a matter to send through to me. So I'll keep trickling away at those, with the goal of the last 2 years I've been at over 95% lodgements on time, and knowing that the other 4 or 5% are out of my control. So that's always my goal, is to get as close to 100% as possible. I want to lodge everyone that can get me information. I want to lodge their return on time. That's the goal. So if you have missed the deadline and you were going to lodge yourself, either get in and get that return done as soon as possible, or get in touch with an agent. Get on an agent list and work with them to get that return done. Like, the better you can get it, the quicker you can get it done, that it's one less stress. What I find is a lot of people that lodge late, it actually is quite a stress for them, and they stop wanting to think about it, and it's going, oh, I've got to lodge my tax, I haven't done it yet. They get more and more stressed, and then they miss the second year, and then they start to go, oh, I'm going to get these fines and this, and it's like, sometimes you're better off just bite the bullet and get it done, and ask the question, go, hey, how do I get this done? I need help. What do I got to do? So yeah, definitely recommend, if you've missed the tax deadline, etc., get that done. So that's probably a big thing that's happened over the last few weeks, is like, okay, that deadline comes up, people do get stressed. And I had a lot of clients that were existing clients of mine contact me, and even I put out quite a bit of content around this, like email my clients, etc. And I still had people going, oh my god, the 31st of October is coming up, I need to get my return done by then. And telling them, hey, look, you're going through an agent, we have an extended due date, it's the 15th of May. And suddenly that that stress that they had, but sometimes that stress can be good because it can force people to get their information organized and get it done. And especially if you're getting a refund, we've still got a week or so to the end of November that, hey, look, if you get your information, through to an agent like myself, you can get your return. If you're getting a refund, you should have that back before Christmas. So, get in and get it done. So I'm planning annexing Tasmania, making my own tax laws. I have seen some great articles in the past of people that have decide. I think it's probably mostly US based, which doesn't surprise me. But hey, look, I'm my own country, and therefore I have my own taxes and my own dollars, and it's my own laws, and I shouldn't have to pay American taxes and stuff. I don't think any of those cases would quite hold up in court. But hey, if you want to create your own country there out of Tasmania, don't know how many people in Australia they might say, hey, take it, we don't want it. Interesting. Yeah, the next thing was the budget. So the budget did drop during my time off, I believe, and it really wasn't an overly interesting budget from a tax or even a super point of view. So there wasn't a lot of major things, and I think that's because a lot of the budget focus has been on economy, which I'll talk about interest rates soon. But yeah, it always pays attention to have a look at these things, and I definitely will make content when I think it's relevant. But it was definitely one of the more quieter budgets from a tax point of view. And that's because it's also a second budget we've had during this year, because we obviously had, I believe so, because we had, change of the government, and that can always bring with it a different focus than necessarily coming in and making a lot of tax changes straight out. Is, they come in, it's a change of government. It's like, hey, we want to focus on, these promises we took to the election rather than, hey, we want to change this tax thing. It doesn't, especially because we've had quite a long gap between a change of government. So yeah, it wasn't overly impactful. I think the areas more so will be interesting is, the lower middle income tax thing, is people understanding how that offset works and why that's being cut off, etc. And that was probably, and we've got a few other things that are happening in that tax-based world around payroll, with single touch payroll coming up. So, or single touch payroll phase 2 is going to be implemented soon, which is going to make quite a difference to how payroll is reported, and it's going to have a lot of flow and flips to things like Centrelink. So it should streamline a lot of processes, but there's a lot of government focus in those areas. So all of that's going to be rolling out, etc. So there's a lot going on, but not necessarily directly related to budget like we've had in some previous years. And obviously, during some of the COVID time, there was a lot of crazy changes that were happening to tax and to budgets and stuff like that that were affecting a really broad base, which is kind of rare to go, like, especially schemes like JobKeeper, and that affected, tens of, or, I think we're close to 10 million Australians or something that were affected, somewhere in that range. Like, so it was a lot of people, maybe not quite that many, sorry, but, a lot of people were affected by changes like that. So yeah, that was an interesting time. So, and then of course we've got the whole interest rate issue that's still happening. So interest rates continue to rise. I'm not sure what the cash rate is up to. I might have a look at that. But yeah, we keep seeing interest rate rises, and I can't see that slowing necessarily right now. Like, what we were, 0.1% there for so long was the cash target rate. And I think, yeah, we're now up to 2.85%. So that's, quite a jump that, and most people are going to expect to see, rate rises of that around that 3% mark. So, and I think that's the highest rates we've been at for nearly 10 years, since, 2013. So it is an interesting, like, thing to deal with. That, like, even I don't have huge debts or anything like that. I do have a home loan, and even just a small home loan, you can see the difference is $300-400 a month. So it's like, sometimes you're talking over $100 a week, and that's on smallish loans. So if you've got large loans, like, it does hit people's personal budgets. So I think it's definitely something I've talked about on the channel before, is, don't overextend yourself. Understand, how will an interest rate rise impact me? So, and even now it's like, okay, what about if we get another 1, 2, 3, 4 rate rises, like another 1%? How does that impact your loan repayments? Can you afford that? If you're not going to be able to afford that, what are you doing about it? Like, are you going to cut other stuff back in your budget? Are you going to have to look to refinance? Can you get a better rate? Can you somehow restructure some of your loans to help? Do you need to sell something? Like, have you got an investment property that maybe you need to sell that to help? Like, what's your plan? If you don't have a plan and just going, oh, I won't be able to afford it, that's going to be an issue. Or if you go, hey, look, I'm going to have to cut back my budget, you better have to do that now. Go, you know what? I'm going to do a review of my streaming services I've got. I'm going to, hey, look, I'm going to cut that. I'm paying something extra that I don't need. Like, looking at those things, cutting them back now, so that then when the rate rise hits, you're already used to that. And maybe in the meantime, hey, look, I've saved that $100 a week. I'm going to save that, put that extra onto my loan, so I'm further ahead as well. Like, looking at multiple strategies that you can put in place to help when you get impacted by something like that. So it's definitely something that I think have hit people harder than what they thought. And the flow-on effects, where you've got interest rates rising and the cost of that's going up, the cost of living, obviously, which is why they're trying to bring the interest rates, has been going up. And you notice these things. You notice the price of food going up. You notice, the price of housing going up, electricity, all these things. And you're trying to balance, all these different rises at once. And if your wage isn't rising by that same, if all your costs have gone up by 10%, but your wage has only gone up by 5%, there's a shortfall. You're going to be going backwards based on where you were. So hopefully you're in a position where it's like, hey, yeah, I'm just saving slightly less, or I'm going to find a way to bridge that gap. So sometimes it can be like, hey, what can you do to bridge that gap of, hey, this is where my budget was, this is where it is now. What's the difference? So yeah, and Peter's what banks are lending on a 3% buffer now. Very tough on first home buyers will be forced to borrow less. And that's the thing. The banks will look at, hey, the current rate is 6%. Can you afford it 9% from a bank calculation? But you want to make sure you understand that as well when you look at your own budget, not going, oh, hey, yeah, my loan repayment's $2,000 a month. The banker, have assessed you that, hey, you can afford, 2,500, 2,600 kind of thing. But you want to make sure in your own budget, you're going, hey, yeah, can I actually afford that? Like, your money better than the bank will, kind of thing. So, yeah, but it does make it harder to like get loans. You need to probably have that more savings, etc. And obviously, housing prices are still high, even though they've come down a bit in some states. They are still high. Like, it's not cheap to buy a house. Like, so understanding that, especially if you're wanting to buy in capital cities, and especially obviously if that is Sydney or Melbourne, having that understanding, you go, hey, look, what's this plan, or am I happy renting? Like, I guess it's just about planning, and definitely is people can do it. People do it all the time, but it may, do you need to do extra hours at work? Is it a side hustle? Is it growing your business? What can you do to do that? And all these things, I guess, as you're going, especially people around my age, looking at it's like, okay, are you looking to buy a first home? Have you got a home? Are you looking to upgrade and these kind of things? What's your plan to do it? Like, what is the long term, that 1 year plan, the 5 year plan, the 10 year plan? Like, how are you going to make happen what you want? You could do what the octopus has said here and just cut out your donuts. So if you're spending $100 a week on donuts and you cut the donuts out, there's problem solved. So yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting economy right now, and it I don't think it's going to get easier necessarily in the short term. I think it's probably going to get tougher, and I think people need to understand that. And what can you do about it? Like, rather than sit back and go, well, it's all too much, never going to be able to. I'm seeing a lot of people going, I would never be able to afford a home. And it's like, well, okay, if that's you're thinking, it's like if you've done a realistically plan and going, hey, look, I can't see that happening in the next 10, 15 years. Okay, well, if that might not be realistic for you, if you don't want to do anything to change that, then don't worry about that plan and have a different plan, a different goal to work towards if that's the case. Maybe you go, hey, I want a holiday more. I want to do this instead. Like, look at things from that point of view. Look at it from a realistic point of view. And I think that's what I'm trying to say with budgeting and interest rates and all that. Hey, look at these things from a realistic point of view. Can you realistically, what's the realism of it? So I wish it was $100 a week. My donut budget rivals must Twitter takeover. Yeah, the Twitterverse is very interesting. I've been keeping a close eye on things over on Twitter, and it's interesting. And talk about, and then not everyone likes Elon, etc. But a man that's bought a business that obviously wasn't turning a profit, and hey, there's some drastic changes going, but it's the realism approach to go, hey, you know what, our wages are way too high. He might not go about the best way, but hey, I need to cut staff, and all of a sudden, hey, if 70% of my staff walk away, there goes our staff budget, and suddenly, hey, we can get this back on track profit wise. You know, some of these, even though people might not like some of these rich people, they're not dumb people. They don't become the richest people in the world through nothing. And quite often, it's like taking a realistic approach and going, hey, it might be dramatic and it might be, a lot of hard work initially, but how do we get to a point where we can turn a profit? So yeah, and then the other thing, I thought I'd touch on is the crypto market. I'm sure if you're involved in crypto or if you read any news headlines, you'll see that the crypto market has definitely had its challenges over the last couple of weeks. So if you haven't, seen much about I believe the second largest exchange, I think it was in the world, FTX, has pretty much collapsed. So long story, but in essence, is that they blew all their money. They had no cash reserves, kind of thing. They blew it all. There's a lot of funds that people don't, and when I'm talking a lot of funds, I'm talking $1 billion kind of thing of like where are these at? They eventually, have filed for, I think it's called Chapter 21 or Chapter 11, might be Chapter 11, sorry, over in the US, which is, the kind of the start before you go bankrupt, starting that process of getting people into, external people that try and fix this mess and have it, or at least unravel the mess. And the guy that was doing it, I believe he was involved in the Enron stuff years ago, and he's come out and said this is the worst case he's ever seen. They couldn't even get a realistic expectation of what bank accounts this company had. So it was impossible for him at the start to even go. There wasn't even a list of where funds were held, who they owed money to, etc. And the problem is, this is Chapter 11, Peter. This is a situation where you've got people depositing funds, buying crypto, thinking it's held safely on an exchange, and there's nothing to back that up. And this is, I guess when they talk about, it's no different to, in Australia, they talk about chess sponsored shares and stuff like that. And, and obviously crypto works differently. But, when you buy something through an exchange or broker, you're assuming that, hey, you now own that and they've got that backup. If you're buying Bitcoin through FTX, you assume that, hey, I own one Bitcoin. They must have it stored for me. This is a type of situation where it's like, oh, sorry, guys, we don't really have that kind of money. You can't withdraw it. So the first thing they do is halt withdrawals. And all of a sudden people go, oh, I had, 5,000, 10,000, 500,000, $1 million worth of crypto on this exchange. And they're like, oh, yeah, guys, we can't pay you out. We can't get rid of that because we didn't actually hold that. And that's what it is. It's like, dude, they have one-to-one backing of like, for every one Bitcoin you own, they actually had that. Turns out, they didn't. And it's had flow-on effects across, to other, they've got international branches of this. So, there's an FTX Australia, and then that has an ongoing flow-on effect to, so Digital Surge, an Australian one, then said, oh, hey, we've got to halt just deposits and withdrawals because we were using them and we had funds with them. And therefore, even though we held everything one-to-one, we can't now access our funds. And now we can't process withdrawals on our back end. So, these things have definitely some interesting flow-on effects. And then when all of this kind of thing happens, the market tanks because people go, hey, I want to, in other exchanges, they sell out, etc. So I talked about a bit on a video come out yesterday. And one thing I didn't touch on in the video, which someone left a comment talking about, is FTX has had some malware previously on the website. There was some rumors of that. So potentially look into that before you actually go logging in and trying to pull CSVs. But what I was talking about, protecting your own records is it. I guess it doesn't matter where and what type of funds you've got. You want to rely on yourself to have copies. So, crypto, go to your exchanges, pull out CSV files of your transaction history. That way you've got it. Especially in Australia, it's a self-assessment system. So you've got the onus to keep your own records. So it doesn't matter if it's crypto or if you've got shares. Okay, do you save your share, buys and sells? It's not very unlikely it's going to happen. What happens if Comsec's down and we lose all history of that? Or at least you've got records of it. If you buy a property, you want to get the settlement statements and keep them and file them yourself. Because what about happens if your lawyer retires and moves overseas and they don't hold their records and you can't get in touch? Which I've seen that happen. People have set up trusts and I've got no idea what the deed is and I can't get a hold of the lawyer. And it's like, this is why you want to keep your own records, take your own responsibility and, secure your own information. Because if if something happens, you've got it. Like it's your records that you need to produce. And here's a comment. There's a lesson here, not your keys, not your coins. And that's a pretty common, not your keys, not your crypto, however you want to say it. It's all about, and I guess crypto was wanted to bring in this, decentralized finance world where it's like, hey, everyone takes their own responsibility. And for a lot of people, that's intimidating. Oh, I have to set up a wallet and I have to store this code, this phrase. And how do I do that? And it's like, I guess that's the balance of like, hey, you want a decentralized thing. That means that if something goes wrong, you don't necessarily have, hey, look, someone to go back to. I guess it's, we're lucky these days with banks. You go use a Visa card and someone steals your Visa card and it's like, something goes wrong, you can ring that bank and likely get your money back pretty easily. It's not the same. So it's like, it's that balance of like, hey, do you want, take control of it yourself, cut out the middleman, but if something goes wrong, you can't get it back from the middleman. So there's one exchange in Australia that said it does hold one-to-one. Your cold wallet advice is 100% spot on. And there's a couple of exchanges that have come out. CoinSpot, I believe, have said they hold one-to-one. But there's a lot of now controversy about, well, how do they hold it one-to-one? I guess that's what Digital Surge said. Hey, we do hold everything one-to-one. The problem is that the way they held it one-to-one was through a third-party broker, a third-party exchange, sorry, and they were just a broker, and therefore their funds have got frozen. So it's like, to me, the only logical way that you could really back up and say, hey, yeah, we hold to one is they hold it in their own cold wallets. That to me is how it should work. But I guess, people, they try and leverage, things to, I guess, so they can make as much money and stuff like that as well. Or, in Digital Surge's case, they didn't have the liquidity to be able to process the trades within their own system. So, they would use a third party exchange to do that. And, so that was their market maker kind of thing. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing of like, okay, when it's held one to one, that, yes, all deposits should be held one to one. FTX weren't doing that. They were leveraging off customer deposits, I believe. And that's where a lot of those issues come from. But, even within holding one to one is interesting. And therefore, if you've got any significant funds, is it worth, holding onto these in a cold wallet yourself? Probably, is, the case. And, I've read some horror stories about people that have had, all of their self-managed super fund in crypto held through, I think it's eSuper, which then used Digital Surge, I believe, at one stage. So it's like, these are the things, and understanding diversification across assets. And it's like, if we have a housing market crash, you wouldn't want all your assets to be tied up in property. If we have a share market crash, do you want it all tied up? If the tech sector crashes and you've got it all in there, it means everything's going to crash. You've got all your crypto and you've gone and invested all your self-managed super fund. You probably want to ask yourself, why have I done that? And if you did, why is it all just sitting on one exchange? Like, was that really the right idea? And then I've seen people try and blame that then on the government, saying, well, they, that's our super and they should have done their due diligence. And it's like, it's a self-managed super fund, with the key word there being self. And you've made that decision. And unfortunately, it was a risky decision. Even if it, that risk was low, the risk was clearly there. So, hopefully Digital Surge doesn't go under and, people can recoup their funds. But I think it just comes down to, sometimes people, they might not realize it, but what they're doing is becoming, greedy because they're chasing these crazy gains. And it's like, with crazy gains comes crazy risk. Like, that's the reality of it. The safer the option, the less risk there is. And that's, the less return you're going to get, but that's what happens, Putting your funds in an Australian bank account, is very, very secure because we have a bank guarantee deposit here. Even if a bank happened to go under, the government, there is different, these are $250,000 per bank that, you're secured for. So it's like, there's that backup. So it's like, understanding these things definitely will make your life a lot easier in the long run, because you want to avoid being caught up in these situations or limiting your risk to these situations. So, I think the crypto world, beyond, having a cold wallet, but, everything comes with some kind of risk, but you want to try and, what's the way I can reduce that risk and keep it as low as possible? So I think that's, the lessons that people are going to learn is like, what's your balance between risk and reward? And you probably want to err on the, hey, I really want to reduce my risk. And some of these things you can reduce your risk without necessarily damaging your reward too much. Like, the only downside to having funds on a cold wallet is, hey, it might take a little bit of time to, get them from a cold wallet back to exchange if you want to sell quickly. But, the chances are, if you're doing that, that's probably not what most people are doing. They're not trying to quickly move funds within, 5 minutes to sell before a market crash. So if you're doing that, you're likely trading, and it's a whole different world. So, yeah, so no, that's there's been quite a bit happening. Like I said, I just wanted to jump on, cover some of these topics. And yeah, I really want to. I've said this, I've been saying it since I started, but I do really want to keep growing the channel. And I'm giving some brainstorm as to what type of content that is, and what format that's in, and whether I keep doing the lives, or whether they become a regular thing, whether I get guests onto them, whether it's guests on the normal channel, whether it's different types of content, different lengths of content. Is there something else I can do that adds an entertainment side to the education, etc.? Looking at all those different things. So, the best way for the channel to keep growing is by you guys, sharing the videos around and just watching. So, really, really appreciate that. And yeah, Peter's got a good point. Take less risk the older you get, maybe, and that's 100%. Like, the closer you get to retirement, the safer you'd want your super, for instance, to be. Like, if you're in your 60s and you're getting very close to accessing your super, well, you probably don't want to invest it all in high risk assets where you could lose it all. Now, if you're 20 years old and got $5,000 in super, you might not care as much. But like, as you're, getting older, you probably reduce your risk. That just makes sense. And on the other side, when you're younger, you may want to take more risk because you go, hey, look, the reward and the chance for something to bounce back is a lot longer term, and I'm happy to take that. It's just a balance, and that's why I guess everyone's risk profile needs to be assessed individually. It's why we have such stringent rules in the financial planning industry, because it's like everyone has a different viewpoint on money. Even if two people have the exact same assets, the exact same jobs, they may have a different approach to how they want to approach their money going forward. And that may be true today. And in a year's time, you may have a different approach. So, obviously for myself, now I've got a family, we've got a child, I've got to understand, okay, probably your risk I need to drop just one tier, because you might go, hey, I've now got another person I need to provide for, and maybe that risk reduces a bit. Like that's just some of the things that changes. So, yeah, thankfully SBF deceit got exposed before it got even bigger. And yeah, like I hopefully this kind of puts a bit of a spotlight on exchanges and that to go, hey, we want to see what you guys have. We don't trust you because of this, big things like this happening. And yeah, and there's a lot of smart people that have been, there's a lot of big funds managers over in the US that invested quite significant, hundreds of millions of dollars in FTX. And yeah, they've seen one of them the other day wrote that off back to zero. So these people, you'd hope they're not stupid with money. They're talking big, large sums of money. And even some of the smartest people can, lose money. So that's the reality of it, and that's the risk. So anyway, I appreciate everyone for swinging by tonight. It's been a bit of fun, and yeah, keep your eye out because I'll be definitely putting more. And drop comments on videos, send me messages. What content do you want me to cover? That's really the. If you're watching on replay, drop some comments down below. But yeah, I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.